Ibn Battuta's bogus journey. Ibn Battuta is a sort of traveler that might be compared in some ways, and often is, to Marco Polo. Closer to the microphone. Is this close enough? Yes, all right. I will develop my relationship with the microphone. Okay. The specific image that you see there is actually a copy of, excuse me, I'm hitting the wrong button. There we are. Books. This is a copy of the actual manuscript in Arabic that was for sale on Sotheby's. This had become something of an invisible thing until the 19th century. It was written in the 14th century, but it came back then when a number of European scholars decided that, well, it was time to resurrect the scholarship of people other than perhaps Arab folks. Now, it's interesting because the writer, Ibn Battuta, identified as an Arab man, but by ethnicity, he was Amazigh, what we might call Berber. Berber is not a very nice word for anybody, any Amazighs in the house? Any folks from Morocco, natives? No. Not a very nice word. It's passing out of use now, associated with barbarian and various other unpleasant things. To give you an idea of the scale of the journey that this purportedly Arab and actually Amazigh guy went on, let's take a look at a 73,000 miles. Most scholars are of the opinion that no, in fact, he did not do 73,000 miles in 29 years. However, the kind of trip that he went on was a long, strange one indeed. There's an Arab word for it. It is called a rihla, R-I-H-L-A. A rihla is a combination of two things. One, outright bullshit. Two, usually transparently identifiable. Two, real experiences by the real traveler, which ring true based on the evidence available. And three, the plagiarized experiences of other travelers mixed in. This would be a terrible thing, except that the audiences of the time expected it. It was a convention. It was a kind of genre. And it wasn't just any kind of a genre, it was a Mediterranean genre. It was one that was good in Christian lands, let us call them Dar al-Christianity, and it was good in Muslim lands, let us call that Dar al-Islam. Marco Polo, for example, died in 1324, which was the year before Ibn Battuta set out on his 29-year odyssey. Art. Not mine. There we go. Whoops, wrong button. There we are. The thing that all of us who survived the Reagan administration feared most, I pressed the wrong button. All right. So, here we have a picture, thank you, of the Catalan Atlas. This, a document from 1375, depicts a gentleman of the Malian persuasion, whom you see with a scepter and crown, by the name of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa bears a heavy influence on the travels of Ibn Battuta because a mere 2 years before Ibn Battuta set out on his Hajj, his holy journey to Mecca, Mansa Musa had done the same thing, except instead of coming as a very poor Haji, like Ibn Battuta did, Mansa Musa came armed with bucks, mountains of gold, largesse everywhere. In fact, so much of it that it floated the economies and depressed the price of gold in North Africa and the Middle East, and then across to Europe for many years. So Ibn Battuta traveled in the wake of a lot of money. Many things going on at once in this Mediterranean world through which he traveled. Ibn Battuta did not write down his story merely on his own. No, he had instructions from this gentleman, the Sultan of Morocco. People at this time, of course, in Dar al-Islam, were ruled by autocrats under Islamic law, just as in Dar al-Christianity they were ruled by autocrats under Christian religious law. The Caliph said to Ibn Battuta, after 29 years of wandering, which probably didn't include 73,000 miles, but did include quite a number, time to come home and tell your story. And someone has to write that story. Indeed, this is an illustration of a man sitting down listening to someone who might possibly resemble Ibn Battuta. His name, the gentleman writing and sitting there, is Ibn Juzai. Ibn Juzai was, how to put this, the ghostwriter for Ibn Battuta. Somebody had to put the words of the storyteller, his elegant morsels, into elegant style, and that was the job of Ibn Juzai. Art. Here we see an example of the journey itself, and the journey took many forms. Sometimes Ibn Battuta was alone, sometimes he was with other people, sometimes he traveled with fellow people on pilgrimage, sometimes he was in an exalted situation, sometimes he was marooned and trapped with pirates. It varied a lot. But meanwhile, in other places, for example, I don't know, Italy, the Decameron was being written at about the same time because the Great Plague rolled through the world, causing much consternation and doom. Here we see an example of a painting of the folks hiding out from the plague in the Decameron at the same time. The plague, ooh art. This is a, unfortunately, somewhat accurate depiction of the plague itself. Let's move on. All right, back to the Catalan Atlas and the goal, more art. The goal of all of this, of course, from the point of view of Ibn Battuta, initially, he did it twice, was the Hajj, a trip to Mecca. He managed this and much more on his journey. Architecture and art. One of the things that Ibn Battuta also did was hang out for quite some time in Cairo. Cairo was run by the Mamelukes. This was kind of like the football team being in charge for quite a number of centuries. They were quite strong and manly, but they also knew enough to hire some good architects. So there are many wondrous things that have been left to us by the Mamelukes. Who'd have thought? When Ibn Battuta returned to Morocco, he came to architecture that was being constructed. This very madrasa, this very place of learning, this temple of learning, existed at exactly the time that Ibn Battuta returned to the city of Fez in Morocco. Note the magnificent architecture that depicts no graven images. Again, a depiction of, from the period of a house of wisdom, of a place of scholarship, a place where someone might hear the story of Ibn Battuta, his rihla. Now, architecture. This is not a very happy photo. This is a distant photo of a place that Ibn Battuta visited, but I think you might be interested in a description of what he found there, because Ibn Battuta has an eye for the unusual, and he focused on certain things that were, well, odd. And that's why we're here, isn't it? All right, here we go. This, believe it or not, is an oasis town called Walala. There we are. I'll read you a headline for this quotation before I start. The women are of surpassing beauty and are shown more respect than their men at Walata Oasis in the kingdom of Mali, just south of the Sahara Desert. Quote, their women are of surpassing beauty. Their men show no signs of jealousy whatever. No one claims descent from his father, but on the contrary, from his mother's brother. A person's heirs are his sister's sons, not his own sons. This is a thing that I have seen nowhere else in the world, except among the Indians of Malabar. But those are heathens. These people are Muslims, punctilious in observing the hours of prayer, studying books of law, and memorizing the Quran. Yet their women show no bashfulness before men and do not veil themselves, though they are assiduous in attending the prayers. Any man who wishes to marry one of them may do so, but they do not travel with their husbands, and even if one desired to do so, her family would not allow her to go. The women of Walata Oasis have, quote, friends and companions amongst the men outside their own families, and the men in the same way have companions amongst the women of other families. A man may go into his house and find his wife entertaining her companion, but he takes no objection to it. A noteworthy thing for Ibn Battuta, among many noteworthy things, and we have no time for too many more of them, but I will show you a few lovely images. Architecture, yes. Timbuktu, a magnificent mosque. The reason, interestingly enough, side point, for the construction here is that very little in the way of quarryable stone was available to the folks of Timbuktu, so they had to make the best use possible of mud brick and wood, which they did and still do. The reason for the wood sticking out there, anybody know? So that you can keep repairing the thing. Basically, it's a constant project. It is a living building that must constantly be added to as bits of it wear out. Pretty clever if you ask me. There are many sad things. I was warned not to leave any bodies on the stage, but I will very quickly go through this. The trans-Saharan slave trade was something that was going on at the time. For those of you who are, yes indeed, hissing is appropriate. It is a disturbing thing that I will pass over quickly, but it is worth study and it is worth appreciating that it went on for 1,000 years as opposed to the transatlantic trade's 500, and that it was worse. Now, getting back to things we can drink. All right. Art. Ibn Battuta returned as what more or less amounted to an old man with a lot of mileage on him, even if not 73,000. He might well have looked something like this. This is a period illustration. And finally, when he returned to his native Tangier and died in 1369, he was buried, we don't know. Basically, tour guides will take you to this place in Tangier, and they will tell you that Ibn Battuta is buried there, but it's not really known. In any case, now and without further ado, I wish to raise a toast to the gentleman from Tangier and to all who journey, all who roam. In keeping with tradition, I raise a glass in honor to all who journey and all who roam, be their journeys bogus or most excellent. Thank you.